YouTube! Twitch streamer is doing what Twitch streamer does best. We're gonna watch someone else's content. Yes, that's right. Sadi here has got OCG Tales #1, Floodgates. It tells a nice, comfy, cozy nap time story about Floodgates in the OCG.
So I know this video is outdated because they made an emergency ban list, but I got Fiendish chained by work, so I didn't upload this back in October.
Fiendish chained by work.
And as
God,
I was drafting
boy,
the next
do I
video
know
in
it?
the series,
I'm always busy
if
with
I
work.
don't upload this, it makes my next video
Lots of
kind
work
hard to
going on in
understand,
my life,
so I'm
man.
going to
It's
upload it
crazy.
anyways. So a lot of people are pretty upset about YCS Anaheim finals, and to be fair, I think it's pretty justifiable. It's unfortunate that the top cut ended up being a lot of non-games for a format that was heralded as a pretty good one, but that...
Can I just say it's very ironic that it's a video essay with, like, you know, sometimes people just put generic background footage. Have you ever seen, like, the crazy ones, which it's stuff that just doesn't make any sense, like TikTok short, like, AI-generated voice stories from Reddit, and it's someone just reading it, and then in the background it's, like, GTA 5, like, surf gameplay or something. But the Floodgate background video is a tier limit FTK.
got me thinking about the legality of Floodgates, and what I'm realizing is that I'm pretty sure the justification for the legality of Floodgates is even weaker than most people think. To my understanding, the reasoning people use to explain why Floodgates deserve a place in the game is that they give an avenue for lower level players to defeat higher level players, and to some, that may already seem like nonsense, because a game should be rewarding skill if it wants to have a sustainable player base, and players who...
Conceptually, yeah. A game should be skillful and reward skillful play, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not a game driven by competitive play. It's a game driven by business and revenue. That's how, you know, a company like Konami is going to work, right? And keeping people invested by having a chance at winning with Floodgates is a way that they keep an open market in the player base. Just go to Reddit. Just go to, like, our Yu-Gi-Oh! And every couple of weeks, someone's talking about how, like, Maxi keeps the game in check. Stun decks keep, like, meta decks in check. Like, there's a... You might hate it. You might disagree with it. And again, people seem to have a very struggling understanding of arguments. But I'm not defending this. I'm not justifying it. I'm just giving you the reason. There is a large enough proportion of the player base that agrees with this. And whether you like it or not, they exist. And they're around, and you see it happen all the time.
who play better should win more often. That's how every single competitive activity in the world functions. The other side of the argument is that the barrier to entry...
Also, that's not, like, completely true, right? Like, maybe for, like, you know, board games and chess and stuff like that, but video games in general, there is, like, very deliberate design choices when it comes to, like, champions and heroes and, like, RPGs and stuff like that, where, like, some specs, some characters are functionally easy to play. Like, they are just simple and easy and, you know, less complex than other champions or heroes, etc., right? Because they need that entry point for newer players and stuff, right? Like that's just a fact, right? Now, obviously, you can extrapolate that further in Yu-Gi-Oh! And be like, well, yeah, you can make a deck easier and simpler to play in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Sword Soul, but you don't need to give it Floodgates. I agree with that. But the Floodgates obviously still make it even easier to play. That's the problem. And again, not justifying it, but it is a reason.
For current Yu-Gi-Oh! Is extremely high, which means if you start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, you will not win for a very long time, and that is extremely demoralizing for a new player.
Exactly.
I think that is true, and it is also problematic because I think many people have a hard time sticking with an activity where they don't see any returns for a prolonged period of time.
That is just,
for example,
yep, that's just human psychology, unfortunately. Like, if you bang your head against the wall with an activity, you can get demoralized and just quit. Like, for a lot of people, I'm the same. If I start something and I'm not, like, immediately competent at it, I just start to lose interest. And I lose motivation. You know, you can call it, like, ADHD, like, hobby jumping, which is, you know, probably true to some extent, but it's also, like, a good portion of people feel that way, right? It can be frustrating to not have some sort of competency at something, and then you just give it up, right? Like, that's just how humans are. And from game design perspective, you need to, if you want more customers anyway, you cater to those people by making easier games and easier champions and heroes and cards and decks and floodgates, etc., etc.
I have a fighting game background. In fighting games, when you start, you will actually never win. I must have spent multiple years of my life losing, and I think that's partially why fighting games have a flaw in the genre where they are too skillful. And unlike card games or team-based games such as MOBAs or FPS games that involve a degree of luck when you win, there's nothing that helps bring lower players up during the learning phase, which means that the only players that stay with these games are the most mentally tenacious ones. So the player base ends up being small. In my opinion, that is one of the 3 main reasons why fighting games, despite being so excellent, are never big, and why some of the games that the broader community tends to agree are extremely well designed tend to have pathetic numbers. The problem with all this logic is that it only works if low-level players actually like Floodgates, and I'm actually pretty sure the reality is the opposite. I've seen this commented a lot recently.
Dog, have you ever spoken to a stun defender? Have you ever spoken to one of those grandpas that plays like Dyna Control? Like, there are absolutely people who like stun. It's almost sociopathic in some ways, but I want my opponent to suffer. I want my opponent to feel the pain for playing their meta deck. There are absolutely people like that who exist. I have seen comments over the years justifying and defending them. Like, they are very real players.
Patrick Hoban made a tweet. Farfa was discussing this theory, and I'm not really
What? Farfa!
sure what the original source for this reasoning is, because personally, I think that this is an assumption that doesn't really reflect my experience interacting with players. It's just a very popular theory that I feel like has very weak support in reality.
There's no source, there's no evidence, and it's just complete theory. It's a Let me just lay it out so people understand the what's it called, premise here, because a lot of people watching on YouTube, for example, might not know the context. Floodgates exist, and I think Patrick Hoban's original tweet basically said something along the lines of, it is a fundamental principle in Yu-Gi-Oh! That from a design perspective, the best player in the world should randomly lose to a Heart of the Cards moment. That is a deliberate design choice and mechanism that Konami have ingrained into their game. That's what the original Hoban tweet was. Konami, from a design perspective, want there to be Heart of the Card moments. They want, like, lucky moments where you rip a card and it's like, oh my god, right? There's no source, there's no evidence for this. But the reason why that theory exists is because, well, why do they let cards and floodgates exist? Why? Ask yourself. Why is Droll not being pointed in Genesis? Why is Maxi still around in Master Duel? You have to come up with a reason, right? And the reason is all of the stuff we've just gone over. Again, it's not good reasoning. It's not sensible logic from a gameplay perspective, but it is a reason, because justifying floodgates is never going to be a strong reason. It's never going to be like a good reason, but there is going to be a reason. So can anyone theorize as to why Konami keeps floodgates in the game? Well, I think it's for all of the reasons previously mentioned. Unless someone has a new explanation, go ahead and tell us.
So I'm going to use some anecdotes now. Again, for my anecdotes, this is about my experience with locals in China. I'm not speaking for every single OCG player, but I think it's important to go over an OCG anecdote because it has been essentially confirmed by Steven Santoli on Josh's Genesis video that the OCG has influence over the TCG ban list. So if OCG players were potentially against Floodgate...
What is the context to this? How does Santoli have confirmation in a source that TCG is influenced by OCG? I mean, logically it makes sense, but we've always just sort of assumed, like, there's a source for this?
as well, then that could maybe give the TCG side some leeway to start being more liberal with their Floodgate bans.
Does anyone actually know he spoke to a representative? John Konami told him? Like, unironically, John Konami told him? Is that actually why? I mean, it makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with it or arguing. I'm just curious, like, what the origin of this is.
Personal experience is that the majority of low-level players hate Floodgates, to the point where players will see one flipped, and then the term we use to describe them is disgusting. So players will actually ask their opponents, why are you playing such a disgusting card in your deck, or why are you playing such a disgusting deck? Now here's a cultural difference. But what determines how cool a deck is in OCG is significantly more affected by the artwork of a deck than in the TCG. For example, I would say, in general, Fluandries is a deck that was largely considered lame by TCG players. Personally, after they banned Barrier Statue, I didn't really think there was a problem with anything except for Featherstorm, but in China, Flu was pretty much never considered a lame deck in the first place. And I thought that was very interesting because my initial guess was because of Maxi, but the reality is just that it's due to artwork. People just think that the birds are cute. And That's also why decks such as...
Is it really that simple? Is it? I mean, I don't know. I don't know, right? But Flu is a nasty deck. Like, Flu is a horrible deck. Like, can you think of a deck that can recycle Shifter? Like, really? It's okay because they're cute?
Purely and Runic are still so popular in locals today, even though if we're being realistic, Purely hasn't been relevant since Snake Eyes, and Lab maybe only have a couple of formats where it was kind of okay. In general, most decks in OCG are considered cool unless it's an extremely powerful tier 1 strategy like Tenpai, but there is one exception, which is Runic. The reason this is so important is that Runic has art that OCG players should love. If you look at the art of a Runic card, I don't really want to explain why, but it has all the qualities that
No, please do. No, please do. I need to understand. You have to explain. Please extrapolate why this is beloved by the OCG. What do you mean you don't need to explain why? I need an explanation. Like, what do you mean? What is it about Hugin that OCG players love? I want to know this.
Make it a popular and beloved deck ignoring gameplay. However, it is pretty much universally hated because Runic Stun is the most prevalent build in the OCG, and that also extends to when you try to play Combo Runic, even though Combo Runic doesn't even have Floodgates to abuse this in the first place. Let's think about that for a second. Players in the OCG hate Floodgates so much that not even Hugin could overcome this hatred for the archetype in general. In my experience, the only players that either play Floodgate decks or like Floodgates are the mid-level players. The players that care about winning, but their technical play is approximately average, so they cannot consistently defeat the more skilled players. However,
been called out, dude. Been called out.
If we assume that the goal of Konami is player retention, then those mid-level players are already in too deep to Yu-Gi-Oh! To quit even if the Floodgates were universally banned. They just happen to play Floodgates because they are given the option.
Here's the counter argument to that, though. So he's saying that the original argument of Floodgates existing to retain weaker players is flawed because those weaker players don't even like Floodgates in the first place. It's actually the mid-level players who like playing Floodgates because it keeps them at the mid-level player, but that argument is weak because those mid-level players are already invested, and so they're already going to play the game, irrespective. Well, here's a counter to that. But by that logic, the people who are invested and don't like stun gameplay, they're already invested also, right? Because they're playing despite the Floodgates, right? Like, if Floodgates were that bad and that prolific, then all of those lower end of those players would have all quit, right? But Yu-Gi-Oh! Still grows and still gains a player base. I just feel like it's completely anecdotal, and without data and surveying, you wouldn't really be able to come to a logical conclusion on this without, like, numbers, and we can't, right? Because ultimately it's just feely vibes and personal experiences and anecdotes, which isn't invalid. It's just that you can also use this argument likewise, because the people who are at the lower end who don't like stun, well, they're still playing anyway, aren't they? So they're also still invested, irrespective of what the gameplay is like.
Another reason I think that this is true is that there are tournaments with special rules, and locally, I've entered tournaments that have banned all Floodgates. In China, we have two different types of competitions, which are points competitions and entertainment competitions, or for fun competitions. For fun competitions are basically just free tournaments that anyone can enter, and they have their own rules. I used to enter for fun competitions a lot when I first returned to China, but I stopped because I'm degenerately competitive. However, when I first played in these, the special rules that were the most popular were no Floodgates.
I used to play for fun, but then I stopped entering them.
They could have made rules like no meta, no Snake Eyes, no Tenpai, but instead, no Floodgates was the most popular special rule in my area at the time. So I'm still getting Tenpai, but at least there's no Heat Wave. Now, I will say that there's
I'm still getting Tenpai, at least there's no Heat Wave.
For example, in one tournament, in final, I went second against Purely, and then he did first action D-Fissure, and I'm playing Lightsworn, and in my hand is Wolf Felice Recharge. So I had to ask, aren't all Floodgates banned? But then the tournament organizer just said that some decks need Floodgates to function. Personally, I'm pretty sure that Purely does not need Dimensional Fissure to function, but since it was just a for fun tournament, I'm not upset about it. I'm only mentioning it because I thought it was strange that an exception was permitted. The rules for these tournaments aren't extremely strict and completely enforced, but these tournaments are just more meant to be casual.
By the way, can I just say, like, I think this is the FTK version that he's playing. Just for the background foot, I know, like, you know, Jangling Keys is actually working on me, but he's playing way too slow to do the FTK at this point. I don't even know if he's got Arrow Shark and Rotation. Oh, it isn't the FTK? Oh. Yeah, I guess there's Apo and Savage.
Play sessions that just happen
I don't
to
want
have
to
a
play
bracket.
this now.
So I've only seen this exception happen that one time, but I still think that the idea of no Floodgate tournaments is overall good. These next 2 points aren't about the OCG, but rather other formats or forums, and this is something that Josh mentioned in his video, but Genesis pretty much made every Floodgate unplayable by making them extremely expensive. To me, that kind of signals that the TCG side is already aware that most players probably do not like Floodgates, and they're actually inclined to try to ban Floodgates if given the opportunity. Master Duel is another example. Of the major formats, OCG, TCG, Master Duel, the one that hits stun decks by far the most is Master Duel, and I don't think that's unrelated to the fact that Master Duel has the highest number of casual players. Now, I understand that there's clearly an alternative cause for this that is unrelated to the number of casuals, which is
I don't know if, like, that, like, yeah, stun's not... There's a lot of stun in Master Duel. Like, just the other week, I saw a rated deck. Rated. This is the highest level of competition. There was a stun deck in top 10.
that Master Duel is best of one. But I think both can be contributing
I
factors.
guess it is
Stun
functionally
is
the most
more
hit,
powerful
but
in the best of one. Yes, that is true. Which
they
means that
can
it demands
outright
more
kill
hits.
it if they want to.
But I think that
they don't, right?
having more casuals may incentivize Konami to hit stun than in other formats. I know that I'm making a big assumption here, but at worst you can just say that the implementation of harder stun hits in Master Duel is just proof that you can hit stun without losing massive amounts of players. My final anecdote about casuals hitting Floodgates is actually related to responses.
Yeah, but okay, so he's saying you can hit stun without losing a ton of players, but like we don't really know if that's true, right? Master Duel has been on a mathematical decline for months. So is it because stun keeps getting hit? Like we don't know why Master Duel keeps losing players, right? So but like we could argue that because I feel like it's a big, bold statement of him to say, like, oh, you can hit Floodgates and stun without losing players. Well, how do you know that, right? Because we are losing players, and stun is getting hit more in Master Duel. Now, you could make a false correlation there and say, well, because this happened and the numbers are going down, therefore they are related. But we don't know if they are or aren't related. You know what I mean?
On forums, and in this case, I will be speaking about the TCG.
Just out of curiosity, what are we at these days? We had a bit of a bump in last month. Ooh, not like the biggest bump ever, is it? Kind of floating around 10 to 11, 12,000. And then I think a few days ago, the new pack, we had a peak of 30,000 players. So more than doubling the player base. And then now it's kind of dropping back down to normal. It's still going okay. I wish this didn't show hourly. Is there like a way to see like the daily numbers? Because this is like by hour. Is a bit like, you know. Nope, this is still showing the time. Okay. New pack is always going to pick up popularity for Master Duel, but yeah, I mean, would maybe have to wait till the end of the year to see like how the overall trajectory looks.
I'm trying to word this as unoffensively as possible, but out of every single
wait, hold. All right, I gotta hear this.
Forum I can read, whether that be Chinese forums, Japanese forums, English forums, I would say English Reddit is probably the least reflective of reality. And what I mean by
that's so funny. And this is the least offensive wording that he could use. Our Master Duel, our Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the least reflective of reality. That is a very polite way to put that.
This is not based on card or deck analysis, things based on opinion, but rather things that are more falsifiable. So
okay, but not trying to get all you know, culturally involved with the discussion here, but Western societies naturally just like facilitate more opinionate, or it values opinion more than evidence. And you know, free speech and feelings and all that stuff like takes precedent over logic more so than it does in other cultures. And this is me trying to word it in as nice of a way as possible as well. So what you'll find is people in the West kind of value their own opinions and egos more so than the data presented to them.
Comments that do well on Reddit tend to have misinformation more frequently than other social media. But
no way, Reddit has misinformation. Me when I spread misinformation.
either being extremely historically inaccurate.
I just love hearing someone speak about something like this in such a very serious way when it ultimately just boils down to, like, the crux of the argument really is just that, like, these people are stupid. like, he is in the nicest way possible saying these people are dumbasses.
Or just by saying illegal concepts they can figure out don't work from reading cards. I'm not trying to insult people who use Reddit, but it's because of this misinformation that makes me think that the user base is more casual, and it is a very popular opinion on Reddit to say that all floodgates should be banned.
I don't even think, by the way, that a lot of people on Reddit are casuals. I think they're actually observers. It's an interesting point that I don't think anyone's really mentioned before, but there are a lot of observant Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Observers, more so that are loud online than actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. Like, the loudest opinions you hear about the format, floodgates, and stuff like that are literally people who do not play the game.
So to me, that is actually another reason that suggests that most casual players do not enjoy floodgates. It's not the strongest reason. I have to make a couple of assumptions for this as well. But it's not just Reddit, it's not Master Duel, or OCG locals. It's everything together that leads me to believe that there are many casual, newer, or lower level players that don't love floodgates, and I have yet to find strong evidence of the contrary. The new floodgate lover player that only plays to defeature top players seems more like a caricature to me than a common lived experience. Now, to be honest, I'm probably less harsh on floodgates than most players. I will never, ever say that.
Wait, what does this card do? Shuffle the decks. All cards in all the graves? Wait, why would you want to do that? Don't you want snow food?
Floodgates are a mistake that should never have been printed. Because floodgate type effects are not only in other card games, but in past Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats have an extremely strong expression of skill. However, in the context of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, where there is only one turn and floodgates have been begun to consistently floodgate the floodgate
Can we talk about this board, by
the
way?
Really like, can
we talk about this board? We have an Omni, 3 negates, monster effects, Solemn Warning, monster negate, Maxi as well, by the way.
Floodgates strictly from a gameplay perspective.
Oh, it's the 4 horsemen. Apple, Baron, Mask, Savage.
Saying that I don't think that the lone player based argument is that solid either, at least not based on my personal experience, and I might be missing something, but at the moment I don't really understand why it wouldn't be realistic for them to just ban every single floodgate. If it's based on OCG approval, as other people are theorizing, it's not like the majority of OCG player base adores floodgates either. To end off, I just wanted to take some time to ask for feedback on this type of video because I'm thinking of making this the first part in a series of podcast type videos where I can talk a little bit less researched and use more anecdotes that I have nowhere to put in more research videos. Mainly because I think that anecdotes are important, but also because it just saves me a lot of times on making videos about topics I care about. If I just talk about my experience, because then I don't have to worry about spreading misinformation as opposed to something that would need more research.
Spreading misinformation.
So if you have any ideas for names for the series or topics you would like to hear discussed, please let me know. And thank you for listening as always.
All right. I mean, it's completely anecdotal, vibes-based, thoughts and feelies, but that's not a bad thing because you can only ever really discuss this type of thing from experience. So, I mean, that's whatever. I just find it interesting that his experience with the East is that people actually, even at the absolute lowest end of the ring ladder, don't like stun. But the problem is that I think it's probably the same here in the West as well. It just gets drowned out because of there's a lot of, like I said, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Observers rather than actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. So, who knows? Will floodgates ever fully get banned? I mean, it might be a good experiment for Konami to take a look at this last ban list and see what players' reaction is to them. Because, to be fair, what Konami did in the last ban list, they banned a lot of, like, engine floodgates, I suppose you want to call them, right? Like, Fossil Dyna is essentially an engine floodgate because of the Granite. The Artifact combo was, like, part of a combo that you could do in your engine. And even the non-engine stuff, like Anti-Spell, Summon Limit, Skill Drain, Rivalry, Goes in Tigaboo, they're all, like, limited and completely banned in Genesis. So, they would have to see, is there going to be a drop-off in players because of these floodgates being banned? What is the feedback? What is the, you know, what are people saying about it? And it's hard to know. It's hard to know. It's you really just... There's a lot of just loud voices on the internet. You don't know what's legitimate. You don't know what's, like, loud minority, silent majority. I just think, like, for the most part, they can't really go too wrong with banning floodgates. Because even when new players come to the game, They are designing decks in a way where decks are more new player friendly. I think like Draco Tail does a fantastic job of being quite nice to play like low level. Obviously, it has a lot of skill expression, and a better Draco Tail player will stomp you like 99 times out of 100. But it's like a deck that you just you activate like 3 or 4 cards, you have a board, right? Like maybe that's like hopefully going to be the direction in which they take the game. To keep bringing new players in, rather than like, here's a stun card, just go and stun the world champion and you can win with Dyna Beatdown. Anyway, good video. Click the link in the description down below. Go subscribe to Sunny and subscribe to me as well if you like me talking over other people's opinions. And adios!